God.
Oh my God.
So I'm letting people in now, and so we'll just give it a minute or so.
Are we gonna see like,
Yeah, do we get to see their faces?
is it gonna?
No, but they can hear you right now.
Oh.
All right.
You will not see or hear them.
I feel like Maddie has to give like hello and welcome.
Hello and welcome.
But I'll probably
Very
just,
good.
yeah. So I think I can get started so that we have enough time to hear you talk. So maybe if you want to mute your, I don't know, just so I don't hear any. All right, so good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Monacan Nation as their traditional custodians of the land I'm tuning in from, as well as the Canarsie and Munsee Lenape Nations, where one of our artists, Paul Brainard, is joining us from, and take a moment to pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So my name is Kristen Chiacha, and I'm the Executive Director and Chief Curator of Second Street Gallery. We're a nonprofit art space located off the downtown mall in Charlottesville, Virginia. Second Street is the oldest art space of our kind in all of Virginia, and one of the oldest in the country. And our mission is to enliven Virginia through access to contemporary art and culture and encourage new ways of thinking, seeing, and doing. So just a quick bit of housekeeping before we get started. This is a Zoom webinar, so you can see and hear us, but we cannot see or hear you. So just sit back and relax and enjoy the conversation. We'll have a Q&A session at the end where you can, throughout the talk, you can enter your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And we usually hold our questions until the end, but if there's something relevant to answer immediately, I'll jump in and interrupt. So for tonight's Artist in Conversation, we're joined by artists Madeleine Rhondeau-Rhodes and Paul Brainard for a discussion on Maddie's work, specifically her red painting created for the ROYGBIV group exhibition. So what is ROYGBIV? It's an exhibition featuring the work of 7 artists who were each challenged to create a monochrome work within a color of the visible light spectrum. Each artist was randomly assigned a color and given size parameters, and was then asked to create a work using only shades of their assigned color. So the exhibition is on view in our Dove Gallery at Second Street Gallery until July 23rd. So there's still plenty of time to come by and see the work, as well as our Sharon Shapiro show, which is also in view. Walk-ins are welcome during our regular gallery hours, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. So now I'll share a bit about Maddie and Paul before I hand things over to them. So Madeleine Rhondeau-Rhodes is a painter based in Charlottesville, Virginia, with a studio at McGuffey Art Center, where it looks like she is now. She received dual degrees in historic preservation and studio art with a minor in urban studies from the University of Mary Washington. In 2018, Maddie had her first ever solo exhibition at Second Street Gallery. In 2019, Maddie was accepted as one of 2 artists in residence at the Maple Terrace Residency, headquartered in Bushwick, Brooklyn, where subsequently that resulted in an invitation to exhibit her surrealist paintings in 3 group shows at the prestigious Booth Gallery, Last Rites Gallery in New York City. In addition to having her work in the ROYGBIV group show, Maddie currently has a solo exhibition, Fairies Are Real, in the Sarah B. Smith Main Gallery at McGuffey Art Center. She is also scheduled for a solo exhibition at Second Street Gallery in our main gallery space in autumn 2022. Moving on to Paul. Paul Brainard, like myself, is originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's an artist based in New York City. Paul received his bachelor's degree in painting and drawing, and with a minor in art history and psychology from the University of Pittsburgh. He got his MFA in painting and drawing from Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. His work has been exhibited widely in the United States and internationally, but most notably for us at Second Street, his exhibition, My Body is a Grave, debuted at Second Street Gallery in 2017, and was coincidentally also the first exhibition that I had curated at Second Street Gallery. And he participated in the group show Subculture Shock, which I also curated at Second Street Gallery in 2019. So thank you both for joining us. Now I'll be quiet. I'll try hard to stay quiet and I'll hand it over to you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks. Silent.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you? Well, I guess the thing I wanted to ask you about is this, the current show that's up right now.
Yeah.
When we were talking before we started recording this, now the red painting we were talking about, is that this one, the thin place?
Yeah. So this is the thing that we have to talk about or we get in trouble.
It's good. I know. You don't get a gold star if you don't do it right.
Yeah.
How big is this painting?
So it's about 48 inches by, I would say 32 inches. So it's tall and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the smallest painting that I've ever worked on in this style. So I think that was more of the challenge for me, even more so than the red. Because at first I thought, oh my gosh, I got red. Everything's gonna look like Carrie, It's gonna be like the massacre. Really, honestly, I wanted yellow. That was like the color I really wanted, and apparently nobody else wanted that color.
Did you, now when you guys did this show and you were making works for the show, were you assigned a color, or you got to pick a color?
Yeah, you were assigned a color. Yep.
Oh, so you were assigned red.
So I was bestowed red. Yeah.
From Kristen.
From Kristen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother question about why that happened. I think you could really get into that.
Yeah, I would like to think it was serendipitous, but who knows?
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that because I think I would be just, whatever, as an artist, if I was like assigned red, I would be psyched. But if I got like, I don't know. If I got green, I mean, I make a lot of green in paintings, but I think I'd be kind of psyched about red, given the input.
There's a lot of positives. Like, I mean, it definitely stands out,
You and I were talking before about, and I encountered this years ago, and when I was talking to you last weekend about this painting or about red, I remember when I was at Pratt, someone had made a painting that had all these different reds in it, and I think you had made a comment about the association that red brings up.
Yeah.
Whether it's like physical bodily functions or like emotion or the heart or passion or like whatever, that you made some remark when we last talked that I thought was interesting, because it reminded me of this thing from like 20 years ago that I remember during your critique at school, that was just like, that I wanted to ask you, that do you think you can escape this idea that red has all these very loaded connotations, whether it's psychological or like horror or blood or.
I think my first instinct was, as particularly with the work that I make, trying to find that line of subtlety with utilizing a color like red, because it does kind of bring up those, you immediately think of like blood. And,
right. And it's hard to get out of that association.
But I think that there's ways of playing with the color, like in terms of like the values that I was using, where I tried to kind of create some soft moments. You can't really escape the fact that it has all of these associations, but I think you can play with the values of the color and try to create some resting spots so that it's not so loud all the time. I think in terms of content, this tends to be more, I think, light of what the work that I am usually making is. And so I think that I knew that the content was going to have to shift based on the color that I got, because I didn't want it to become, like, imagine if I did this painting in all red, like it would just look exactly like something out of, an Eli Roth movie. So.
Right, a total bloodbath.
Yeah, the massacre.
Well, the other thing I was going to ask about the thin place painting is that now you just did this, wait, it's June. When did you start and finish this?
I don't know when last year, like probably I started this in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like really actively working on this in the fall.
But it was long after you had been working for quite some time on the collages.
Right. So the collage came, I actually have it. I don't know if people can. So this is the original collage. And there's parts that I took from the other side of the collage and kind of shifted around. Like I digitally edited it to make a more interesting composition. But yeah, the latest thing that I've been doing is making these collages, kind of preparatory work for the paintings. I hate drawing, and so I don't have patience.
I don't know why.
Someone who draws all the time, but I just don't have patience for it. Like I don't want to have to spend all my time trying to render something perfectly to pat myself on the back. Like I just want to make the collage and get it over with.
No, there's I feel like I really got into making drawings over the years because I was frustrated about the time that when I didn't live in the same space that I made paintings, I got really frustrated the limited time I had to work on painting. So I would just be at home and I was like, well, I'm not going to watch shitty reality TV or something. So I would draw at home, and then I just started drawing a lot because it was immediate and I needed to do it like basically daily. But I think compositionally, if you're working on collages like that in the manner that you're talking about, I think it's really good as a like a compositional layout thing, because when you have to shade stuff, it sucks and it takes forever, like you said. It's just like, yeah, it's like, if you get put in prison, it's a good place to do shading because you can't go anywhere and you can't do anything else. A friend of mine who makes very laborious work, we used to joke around about this whole thing about being like, well, yeah, maybe we should commit a crime so you could go to jail just so you could have enough time to work on this, because we called it prison work all the time.
Yeah. Because
it just takes forever, and oil painting is kind of similar like that too. And like, I don't know, it's certainly a different animal, the collage thing and the drawing thing.
Yeah, collage is kind of like taking shots. Like you can just get there really fast.
Yeah. No, it's almost like, I don't. Well, so that was one of the next questions that I had about this particular painting, is that, and I was more familiar with some of your work from, I guess it's like 2 or 3 years ago now.
Yeah, you visited my studio.
Yeah, at the studio there, and that particular painting, the new one, mm-hmm. has like you painting in different modes, which I think probably, would you say that's something that is, it reflects on the collage work? Because it's very different than what you were doing a couple years ago.
No, it's embarrassing how different it was from.
Well, you were doing that totally out of your head, right?
Yeah, the stuff that I was doing 2 and 3 years ago was more like head to hand, like just automatic. Mm-hmm. This is much more, I think, intentional, because they're based off of the collages, or at least the collages are like a starting point, a jumping off point. And so like some of the decisions that I made in this painting with like the cartoon elements specifically, that's really more a function of the ultimately the collage. Because I tried to do a cartoon in another painting and it just was a total flop. So I think that,
why? What made it?
When you try something and you think, oh, this is going to be so kick-ass and it's going to look great, and then you like put it all in there and it's finalized and you're like, oh God, this was not the right choice. It was just one of those, like, you got to try it to see if it's going to work. And then if it doesn't, that's the beauty of acrylics. You can just paint over it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I currently have a lot of stuff at my studio that's really unfinished, and I'm just like, I've got to have 15 paintings that are not going the right direction. So I'm just, they're like getting up, there's a pile of them, and then I'm just gonna make a few of them work. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really I don't know. It's I guess it determines how what the image looks like, how you're working. But I've always been working in this kind of like, I guess it's kind of very 20th century. It's like very Picasso, de Kooning. You make something, you destroy it, or Francis Bacon for that matter too. You know, that you're always kind of like adding things and then taking things away and obliterating things.
Right.
And that's okay. You know, it's I like that. I'd be interested to see this painting in particular in person.
Yeah, I think that there's certain things, that's one of the things that I missed about seeing art in person, was there's so many different nuances to all of the paintings in the exhibition that you lose by looking at a screen.
Yeah.
Really worthwhile to go and look at art in person. It's just like live music, right? Like going to concerts. Like I miss live music so much because there's just something so different about the energy of looking at something or listening to something in person.
Yeah, I agree totally. Except for if it's some lame DJ who just, you go and it's like a guy standing behind a computer on stage. Who's like,
honestly, at this point, I'll take it. I'm not even kidding. I'll take it. It doesn't
yeah, there's something coming up in Queens in the park that I might go to, even though I have no interest in any of the bands whatsoever, just because it's like, hey, woo, you know, we're outside in the park. And I don't know. I think in New York City, a lot of the clubs are supposed to kind of come roaring back in the fall.
Yeah.
You know, it's I think it's going to be pretty crazy here with that stuff. How do you, in terms of this is more of a general question about like whatever the painting, whatever's going on behind you in that painting.
Okay. Hold on. I gotta do.
Yeah, can you switch to that?
Yeah, here. There we go.
Now again, I feel like there's more in this imagery wise, that it's super varied. And of all things, I think in talking to you and in seeing this painting in the lead up to like the idea that we were going to do this discussion, I was really intrigued with this because of this kind of central dark figure, and then all the stuff it's weird, it's bizarre. Like the upper right hand figure is almost this like distorted, mutilated Goya-esque figure.
Mm-hmm.
You know those black paintings that are at the Prado in Madrid?
Yep.
Like it's like, you know, it looks like a person. It almost looks somewhat like your earlier work. And then this fashion magazine lady who looks like she has some kind of unfortunate skin condition.
Right.
In profile. Yeah. Like that's more like glamour magazine stuff.
Yeah.
And then the central figure is kind of like something from Mad Max or something, right? So it's like there's this, you know, and you know, given what kind of artwork I make, that it's like I appreciate this kind of disjointed. It's very collagey and it's very disjointed, but it's also, it's not like they're interacting really, you know?
I kind of want them to feel like their own separate entities in the piece, like that kind of Dada-esque quality of there are all these different mechanisms going on and they inform the other and they kind of are kinetically bouncing off of each other, but they could also only have their own narratives if you pulled them apart. Because I think that's kind of how the brain works too, right? It's like all these individual thoughts and feelings and emotions that can act on their own but also inform each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I operate, is I try to piece together a narrative context that one thing doesn't necessarily have to stand alone. Like they can all each have their own story or concept. They don't have to be within the same style even. They can be, you know, rendered completely differently, but pulled together by some kind of element like color palette or values, you know, light source.
Right. Right. But you don't, so you don't have some grand narrative scheme for them, like where it's all like, this is a stage setup or something, you know what I mean? Where it's like a space they're interacting.
Yeah, I mean, like I pull together, honestly, it really comes down to when I do my collages, the kind of, can I make this look seamless? Like almost like a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
So like, here, I have it with me. Like this one is kind of a poor example of that because it's so disjointed in terms of the light source, but really when I start to kind of pull things together, like with interior spaces or exterior spaces, and I'm pulling figures in as well, like there's always kind of that, I guess there is a narrative, I guess, you know, like a kind of darker subtext, but I think I really am just pulling together things that I gravitate towards. Like when I'm collaging, I'm not really thinking about anything too specifically. Like I'm kind of just making the art that speaks to me in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Is that too vague?
No, I mean, you know, I'm in agreement that these things should be vague, and that like basically what we're doing in the studio or with these paintings is its own like visual language that speaks about the painting.
Yeah.
You know, without getting too, you know, look, it's fine to write about art, but and those that do it well, I really applaud them. But there's a lot of garbage out there, and I feel like sometimes you should just really address what you're looking at, which
Right.
I don't know. I'm glad we have images we can look at while we're doing this, because I think it's helpful to like directly reference something without start talking about, you know, existentialist philosophy or something too.
Yeah, I think
You know,
when I'm making the work too, I think that the message behind it after, like the things that I'm making kind of automatically, like almost like automatic writing, like the surrealists used to do with collage, like the intonations and the messaging, it comes later to me almost, like it kind of reveals itself to me.
right
So
at the end.
I like to make.
What about the title?
So that came later. Yeah,
That's,
that definitely came later. That's the name of a song.
yeah. No, because I you know, I don't, because right, it's like you're driving in reverse in a certain sense in the way you're making compositions. That's definitely the way I work, and I feel like you and I share the similar idea that, like, for what it's worth, a lot of artists out there make stuff and they're like, they come up with an idea, they draw it out, they color it in, it's done. They knew the title when they started it, but like I don't work like that at all.
Yeah, it's almost more intense. It's like a pressure cooker environment because you got to make a lot of really bad art to get to the good stuff, because there isn't necessarily something in mind. Like you've just got to kind of keep making and bouncing different things off of each other to see what's really going to work. And I will say, like, I am working within kind of a larger framework in terms of the idea of the mythology of fairies and using that as a vehicle.
Well, talk about like, because I know what, could you elaborate on that, what you're referencing with
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was obsessed with fairies, and when I was locking things down for the pandemic, I found all of these old books that I'd had as a kid, like the Flower Fairies, and they're really famous little books of poetry. And when I started doing some research on fairies, they kind of exploded in terms of popularity in the Victorian era as a means of distraction from some of the tumultuous things that were happening socioeconomically and financially. And it was kind of a timely coincidence that we were in the middle of a global pandemic, and this was my means of escaping from the things that bothered me. And as somebody who is more avoidant by nature and doesn't want to necessarily reveal the things that I'm dealing with, using fairies as a way of representing like emotions or kind of troublesome memories or events, but it was easier than me kind of laying out like my heart on my sleeve. you know, and so it acted as a really good kind of substitution for myself. So a lot of times, like, the middle figure technically could be like a self-portrait, right? But it's
in the paintings.
yeah, but it's not really, right? Like, it's supposed to kind of represent something that I'm like, my work's intensely personal, and so a lot of times the paintings are really more about my experience, although they do have some kind of universal qualities to them, like unconscious behaviors and rituals, you know, intrusive thoughts, things like that.
I think no, I think a lot of artists that I'm close with and are friendly with, that I feel like we have this there's a spiritual like underpinning of like sensitivity to energy that I definitely feel like, you know, when I meet other artists, I can always sense it in some way. And I think that, you know, I certainly feel that in like you and I discussing like what you're doing with your work and how I feel about my work, and the whole like nature of abstraction, collage, and figuration and rendering and all those things, and how they kind of are hodgepodge together, and you can get things that look similar visually, and they're coming from very different spots, you know. And I think that's a really interesting and amazing thing. I mean, I don't know. I remember I used to get, do you take drugs? Like, do you get this, do you get that?
Yeah, actually, a lot of people think I'm a guy when they see my work, which I don't know why. It's a lot of women, but you know.
A lot of women think you're a guy.
Well,
like,
a lot of people,
I mean, just based on your artwork.
So like, I used to have a male studio mate, and he did these really beautiful, kind of delicate watercolor.
You thought it was yours.
Yeah. They walked over to his stuff, and they were like, "Man, do you have some kind of problem?" You know, and he was like, "Actually, these are Maddie's." So, you know, take it what it is.
And it's, you know, I personally, you know, I talked to you about this the last time we talked, is it's like, I find it really refreshing, because I feel like, you know, given our current, you know, whether it's like this whole state of California on fire, or the pandemic, or, you know, the political drift to like authoritarian governments, it's kind of dark times. And there's a lot of, I mean, it's definitely dark times. It's not kind of, but that you should start to see that becoming reflected in visual art. And I think historically it always, if one follows the other. And I feel like, you know, as the old crabby Generation X guy, I was always like, what the hell's wrong with these kids? Everything's like happy, fun party, like, you know. And so in seeing your work, it's very refreshing for me to see something with like this heavy content, even if I don't know what it's about, you know. And it doesn't matter. That it doesn't matter that I know exactly what the personal history is behind the painting. Like, it's interesting that you're wrestling with these deep psychological things.
Yeah, well, I'm glad
that says enough to me. At least it's not like happy, fun, like smooth jazz party in the hot tub.
Happy, fun, smooth jazz party gets into galleries.
Well, I know. You know, I mean, I see it all the time here. But
not Second Street Gallery.
Right.
Wait, was that the voice of Oz again?
Behind the curtain. But we were actually talking about that the last time we were chatting, about just this kind of movement towards art that's a little bit safer in galleries with zombie formalism.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that, you know, it's like, I'm always dumping, like, I've lived in New York for 25 years now. So I'm always, and I've worked in the art world now for about 20 years here. And I'm always complaining about, there's a real, everyone's always looking over their shoulder in terms of what they buy. Whereas I feel like Europe, it's a lot more open. And like, you know, some of the more messed up, crazy, weird, strange drawings, I sold to like the Danish bank of my work in Copenhagen. Like, they'll buy that over in Europe. Whereas America, I feel like it's everyone sitting on their hands, buying only the most conservative stuff. Well, by America, I mean New York, not LA. LA is like a different thing, I think, but it's really conservative, and everyone will sit on their hands until a review comes out in the New York Times or something. And then the same 500 people show up to buy the same 10 paintings, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very all or nothing. And at the same time, there's been a lot of, there was an article that we were talking about earlier that I think was good, that, you know, that just people buy stuff to flip it. They'll buy your painting for $5,000 to try and sell it for $50,000 in 2 years, or, you know, whatever with the math ratio, you get my point. They'll buy it low and sell it, just like, it's like buying real estate. And there's a lot of that kind of, you know, really annoying Wall Street behavior that's infiltrated the art world in New York. And also, like, you know, other cities you can do a lot more with less money. New York, it's like, just to keep the doors open, you have to sell a ton of stuff. And so, because no one wants to buy some of that weird stuff.
Yeah, no one wants to
You know, like if you do a stripe painting, it's like, oh yeah, look, it's yellow, it's got a couple stripes, it looks like art, you know, and it's like, what? I mean, I like stuff like that too. It's not like I don't like some of it, but it's like
everything informs each other, right? Like, you need the landscape paintings, you need the cow paintings, you need the dark surrealist work, because there's that juxtaposition that makes each thing stand out on its own.
I'm a big believer in dynamics.
Yeah.
And clearly a lot of collectors are not. They only want one thing. But I just feel like, you know, you go to someone's house, maybe you have this abstract painting, you have a photography like gallery, just like different. I like it all. And it's really nice when you see someone that has a sensitivity where they don't just buy, you know, even some galleries act like that too. And I think it's really boring, where it's like, oh, you're the we can paint really good gallery, or you're the photography gallery, or you're the, you know, it's a whole nother thing with the identity politics thing, where it's like you become really focused on this one area. And, you know, I just like it when it's a little bit more jumbled and mixed, and
yeah,
you know, everyone's included in the fondue or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a big subset of the artistic population that's making work to fit into certain spaces, partly just because it's so competitive.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely. And like, you know, it's fine, but I feel like some of those people should just have gone into like, I think it's the reason I entered being an artist in the first place is because you think weird thoughts, or you think like, you know, subversive ideas about society at large and existence at large, right? And that's why you got into being an artist. And I don't necessarily see that reflected when someone's doing like, when they're just obeying all the rules and there's nothing subversive about any of it.
Right.
You know, I think that gets kind of tedious. And like, you know, there's lots of other ways to make money.
Yeah, there is.
You know, and it's really hard to really make money at art. And like, you know, some friends I have that have done very well, you're like, wow, that must be something. Because especially the ones that make money and they're doing even weirder stuff, I think that's just wonderful. I'm like, that's great, you know.
Yeah, there's the collage, in case anybody wants to look at it.
Yeah, wait, I want to look at the collage. So if I pin on it or something, how does this thing work? Is this thing on? Oh yeah. I can see it small. I can't see it big. Maybe I can oh wait, yeah, I can blow it up. Okay. What was the thing at the top, the thing that in your video right now, is that like a 50s hairdryer from like a salon?
Oh, you want to know what it is? It's a lamp from Restoration Hardware I can't afford. It is. Like a lot of this stuff,
How big is it?
The collage is like 6 inches.
The lamp.
Oh, the lamp? Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, restoration hardware gets kind of pricey, right?
Yeah, it's very pricey. A lot of the things that I use in my collages that are like kind of weird mechanical elements are all from like Pottery Barn and Crate and Barrel, like all those kind of modern contemporary light fixtures. Because they just look, if you take them out on their own, they look like something kind of sci-fi.
Here's a question I had about like some of this stuff. I think that, and this is like speaking from my own personal experience about like, before I moved to New York, I did collages and made paintings based on those collages, similar to the way you're working right now.
Yeah.
And also similar as I was throwing like the kitchen sink in there, everything in there, just like whatever random kind of Dada. And I think because of the influence of, in my own work of like whatever, like Catholicism, Francis Bacon, the Second World War, like all this stuff, you just like pile it in there and make this crazy collage. Do you see, and this isn't one of those lame job interview questions where it's like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean it like that, but do you see the fact that you're throwing everything at the wall right now and making these collages and then making the paintings later, do you think that, 6 months or maybe like 2 years from now, you will be making very different work? And do you have any way of seeing how that goes? Or are you just following the breadcrumb trail through the woods, if you were?
I'm following the breadcrumb trail through the woods, but I think that collage now is so essential to the work that I make, regardless of the content. I don't think that will go away. Like I had never done collage like in a formal part of my arts practice until the pandemic started. And now I'm kind of addicted. So I think that collage will always kind of inform what I'm doing. And I think collage
Did you get a good X-Acto?
is, huh?
Did you,
What'd you
sorry, it cut out for a minute. Did you get like are you really adept with, because there's with an X-Acto now, are you like a?
Yeah, I'm like super.
Did you get like a fancy one? Is there like better ones, like surgical style?
Yeah, so I have some like surgical style X-Acto knives.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have these really small scissors. They're canary scissors that are Japanese that I use like for like really tight corners. If I can use scissors, I use scissors. I prefer scissors to the X-Acto knife.
Yeah.
Because you just get a cleaner edge. But yeah.
Because again, I haven't seen these in person because I've been up here in New York. But you have to take me on a virtual tour. Send me images of some of the stuff.
Oh, here, hold on.
Wait, we can go there right now on the interwebs.
Yeah, so these are like two of my earliest ones. The one Trust Falls, that was one of my first collages that I did.
So that's like a year ago?
That was like a year ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Fairies Always Did Admire the Crocodiles was the very first one that I did.
I really like seeing these because, it's a really effective, super direct way to work.
Yeah.
And I've had, for whatever reason, for 25 years now, I've had this idea about painting, that I really like making paintings from things, but it's interesting how much you think the collage thing, I think, translates really well to the internet.
Yeah.
If you get a good scan of it, and you can get a scanner for nothing. It's a way to like make something immediate and get it out there in a way that's really, really effective,
Yeah, well, and it's super satisfying too, because I mean, you can spend either 6 hours on a collage or like 5 minutes on a collage.
Right.
And you can get something really incredible in
how do you
time.
So Maddie, I'm going to interject because there's a good question that we have from our good friend Peter Benedetti from the audience that
Oh, not that guy.
yeah, you know that guy. He wants to know if you can talk more about the difference between collage work and the idea of hating drawing in terms of how time consuming they can both be. Because why is it that you enjoy cutting paper for hours and working on a collage for 6 hours over
Good
rendering
question.
with the
Good
pencil?
question.
Mic drop. I think it honestly has a lot to do with the rendering aspect of it. Like, is it gonna look
The
as
shading part.
what?
Like shading, you mean?
Yeah,
Like
I don't want to spend a lot of time trying.
I know.
Like a lot of times when if I ever do thumbnails for paintings, they're all stick figures. Like they just show placement because I don't want to have to spend time.
I'm with you.
But with taking elements of photography, like with collage, like I can see immediately how the different elements are going to interact. Like I don't have to wait, for forever to really see it totally fleshed out. Like it may take me 6 hours to cut out a couple of pieces, but once that's done, there's no question whether or not it's going to work cohesively together, if that makes sense, Peter.
And Maddie, do you have because I know the collage on the right ended up a version of it becoming a painting. Do you have an image of that painting you could share, or that painting you could share?
I can hold it up.
Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot. yeah, no, this is
right.
Can people see it?
Yeah, because her face is very, very different. So maybe you put it on your chair. Yeah.
Better.
Yeah, because I specifically wanted to see, because I remember her face became very different. It was more of like a creepy, doll.
Yeah, she looks like the person. And remember when the girl goes in the closet in The Ring?
Yeah.
She gets like dried up and killed. Wow, that's it.
Yeah, like at the beginning of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
So what was it that happened between, because the collage is very different and she's human. And so what was the process taking you from that collage to becoming the figure that she ended up in the painting? I'm just curious about that thought process and how that happened.
The process of it, like with the red painting, like that person was kind of rendered, not realistically, because I can't paint realistically, but rendered almost more pretty. And sometimes that's a choice for like the kind of underlying narrative context, for me to render something a little bit more grotesque. So sometimes it just comes down to what I think like the story needs overall for the painting. Like with that, having that kind of strange, distorted figure in the background, it seemed more relevant for me to have kind of a grotesque image. I didn't want her to look too gussied up and pretty, if that makes sense.
How much do you think that when you're making, because I feel like, how much do you feel like you're conscious of and you're presenting these different people, sometimes in more glamorous, visages of, or whatever, or like really like almost mutilated, or really psychological, really dark, like I was referencing Goya earlier. How much are you conscious of that, and how much of like, I don't even know how to word this. It's like, how do you present, like, given our current existence of like the media and the internet and just everything, where you're bombarded with imagery, and not just like, advertising commercial imagery, but like highly sexualized imagery through advertising. Yeah. Like, how much are you conscious of that whole thing when you're dumping that all into what you're making? If that does that make sense? It's a question.
I think as a woman, you're much more conscious of it. Like there's just these presentations of women that are so far from, and I think social media like Instagram, there's this fairy tale imagination kind of world that people exist in that is so far removed from reality. And the paintings that I'm making, I'm trying to almost portray women's insides more as their outsides, right? Like when I was reading a lot about surrealism and how, people were depicting women as either just these muses, right? Like these beacons of virtue and naivete, or they were like dismembered body parts. There was no in between for the way that women were being represented in that art form. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so much more to the female and I should say the feminine experience than either the virtue and naivete versus the kind of dismemberment. And
it's either like femme fatale or it's like,
right, like,
or it's like look, it's a woman and then there's a tree and it's nature, or like, it's like
lights with the redhead, like it's, this like beautiful picturesque version of a woman, but there's no kind of relationship to like the suffering that women experience and just the overall feminine experience in general. And so when I'm making these works, there are times where I think it's appropriate to render like the figure in a kind of more idealized form, but I also think that you need again that juxtaposition of the reality of what life experience wears on you. And so that's really more what I'm interested in depicting, is that difference.
Mm-hmm.
So Maddie, we have another question from the audience about this idea of, collage versus the painting. And this one comes from another artist who uses collage in her work, Sharon Shapiro. And she is asking, how do you feel painting an image affects the content versus collage?
I think there's more, at least for me, like the collages are really that jumping off point. And I don't know, Paul, like in your work, if that's the case as well. But like, for me, it's really more the jumping off point, and then the painting is where I can really experiment.
So you see the collage as a study, whereas I know other artists don't see the collage as lesser. They see it as a fully realized, developed piece of work that has no, it's not lesser or more than the painting. Right. You're seeing the collage as your sketch.
I should preface, that like I never intended for any of these collages to see the light of day. Like that was not something that I ever considered, because I really did look at them as like studies and sketches, just like you said.
We have a whole show of them now. For a lot of 93 for people to see.
And so then when people started really like appreciating them in a different way than I had seen people appreciate my paintings, I thought, okay, well, this may be something that would be interesting to just present to the public and not keep as like a private kind of practice. But yeah, I don't know, Paul, I
don't know if this cyborg space one, this is an old painting from like 10 years ago, but like, and actually that other one with the nude and the skull, that whole thing is like, that directly, I feel like that directly references a certain point of life in New York City, of like the G train line in Brooklyn about 10 years ago. There was a lot of like, I feel like a lot of what I was doing was referencing directly living in New York City. And this painting in particular was, people used to just chop up the subway ads and stick them together kind of like that. And they were, not to pat myself on the back, but they weren't that sophisticated. It was kind of really guttural, and they would just like stick some woman's face on some guy's knee. And it was like, but there was this crazy, like, haphazard, ugly subway collage that feels very much like New York City.
Yeah.
And I was so taken aback by how gross and funny and just raw they were. You know, it's kind of like street art or like graffiti or a kind of combination of all of it. And it was like, I've certainly done the thing where you're talking about you make a collage and then you make a painting based on that collage. But sometimes it was like, I feel like, and I don't know, I think anyone in who's been in a big metropolitan area like New York, like you experience this thing where you're taking a picture of it and then you're walking by it on your way home from work. And all these things kind of filter into like, then you go into your studio and you're trying to either directly reference something you saw on your walk home or you took a picture of it. And now like, I feel like now it's easier because everyone has a phone all the time. So if you see some ridiculous shit in the street, you're just like, I'm taking a, and I do this all the time, where I'll take a picture of something I see in New York that's just like beyond ridiculous or gross or both or funny, and then just put it in a painting. So I don't know, sometimes it's directly from a collage and other times it's just like the ridiculousness of this city.
Yeah.
You know, that it, and if you were in Bushwick, it's like, Bushwick is like a cartoon. It's like when you were there for that residency, it's like, and it's even gotten more ridiculous since you were there. And so I can tell you that it's like, you're like walking around in like some like Adult Swim cartoon. It's insane with pizza, like all the time.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question.
I think it did. That was a good question.
Now, Maddie, do you want to go back? We had talked about Sharon's other question earlier before we started recording, just to backtrack a bit. Going back to the red painting, I want to make sure that we talk about this before we leave. But how many reds did you use for this? This is a lot of red.
Yeah, I probably used about 6 different reds.
Sorry. And do you use the color right out of the tube?
Yeah. So some of them I mixed together, but yeah, 6 straight out of the tube.
How do you keep it? How do you keep them like? Because you know the reason I don't paint in acrylic is because the shit dries out so fast that it's like you mix it up and then it's like gone.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Do you use retarder or something that you mix in?
You paint really fast.
You just have to. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good answer. Good answer.
I use matte medium a lot of times. Like I'll use that to keep it a little bit more slick.
Yeah.
But not.
You got to try the gloss. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you how to paint, but like, you know. No, but try. I would be interested to see if you like it or not, or
okay.
It's the same stuff. It's like Golden makes it. It's called gloss medium because I wonder if, I feel like the fact that you're working from photographs and then you know, it kind of makes it glossy like a photograph, and this you might, I don't know, but if you hate it, whatever, I'll buy it from you, like, because I need to get some too.
Okay. Yeah, but I used about 6 different colors, and then Hyrule Red Dark was my favorite. It's this one. Sharon's interested. Paul said he never saw it before, so, or he'd never seen it.
Is it darker than alizarin crimson, or?
No, it's lighter.
It's like more, it's pink, but it's like a pink.
Yeah, it's like a
pink magenta.
Yeah.
Do you use that Quizon, whatever? I can never pronounce it.
Like
magenta.
Magenta colors, yeah.
Like it looks like that right there behind you.
Yeah. So
isn't it weird? Isn't it weird now that you've been doing this and you can go somewhere and be like, I know it. That's ultramarine blue. That's phthalo blue. That's phthalo green. That's like, you know, that's cadmium. Right? It's interesting.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think that I wanted yellow, and I was probably the only one that wanted yellow. I was really bummed when Aaron Eichhorst got yellow, just because I think that would be and I might try to do a painting in yellow just because that would be such an interesting challenge to try to like take the lightest form and the darkest form of yellow.
What are you allowed? What are I'm curious because what are the rules? How do you make it dark? Can you tint it? You know what I mean? Like add white or black, like black as a tint.
I
And
didn't do that, but I think other people did. Like, I really tried.
technically, if you take like cadmium yellow and add black, it makes this like weird greenish.
Yeah.
That's really cool that I discovered by accident a long time ago. But I feel like, or are you just allowed to use different yellows and white?
Yeah, I think
Where's Kristen?
I said it was any.
Kristen, what are the rules?
So I said that you can use any shade, hue, tone of your assigned color, which if you look at, if you just Google that, I mean, there are so many yellows and so many reds. And so that's why, me not being an artist and being the art critic and, the curator, oh, that'll be easy. There's tons of reds and tons of yellows. So this will be easy for them to do. But to answer your earlier question too, the assignment of the colors was totally random. I was really hoping that it would get red. And I was like, come on,
I was curious. I was like, I didn't know if I was just talking out of my ass or not.
No,
she just randomly got red.
Yeah, we put names in envelopes and she pulled, I was like, come on, red. She pulled red. And I was like, yes. And
wait, so who got the worst color? What's the worst color?
I mean, I don't know that there is. I mean, some people are really drawn, like Aaron Eichhorst got yellow and he was like, oh man, yellow. But then Maddie wanted yellow. So, I mean,
people weren't allowed to trade, right?
No,
no trading.
I said no trading. But I think everyone made it work. I mean, the person that did green, I think she was at first like, oh, green. But then, I mean, come and see the show. Everyone made it work really well. So I was really happy with how, and everything goes together so well too, I thought.
I really liked your like 70s, like 1970s Olympic sweatpants wall text, like that, the aesthetic of that.
You're welcome.
Was that you, Maddie?
Yes, she designed it.
Nice job.
Maddie designed that. It's great.
Nice job.
Yeah.
No, because I was like, this looks like Berlin 1972 or something.
It was a good one. And I did do tonight red on my eyes specifically in honor of Maddie. So I'll try orange next week.
Excellent. No, you got to do green. Green, yeah.
So I don't know if we have any other questions, and we're approaching the end of the hour. So maybe thank you both for doing this and for being here. This was a great conversation, but maybe we can skip ahead. Maddie and I can do my Secretary Gallery commercial promotion. Just about a couple of things that are coming up. Oh yeah, come and see. There's that great logo that Maddie designed, which I didn't really think of it as 70s sweatpants, but now I won't be able to unsee it. Come and see ROYGBIV and Sharon Shapiro's exhibition, Social Fabric, is on view in the main gallery. So walk-ins are welcome and encouraged now. The shows are up until July 23rd. And then we have Sam Gray, another artist in ROYGBIV who has Violet. Sam is doing our next Create and Critique, and that is coming up on June 16th and 23rd, and that will also be virtual. So you can go to our website and sign up there. And I think that, and Teeny Tiny Trifecta 4, the deadline to apply is on Sunday, 11:59 p.m. So get your application in. And this year there's a special bonus to the Teeny Tiny Trifecta exhibition. I will be selecting one artist from the show and rewarding them as my Curator's Choice Award, a solo show in the Dove Gallery for May of 2022. So everyone who's accepted to Teeny Tiny Trifecta 4 will be considered for a solo show in the Dove Gallery. So gives you more incentive to be part of a great fundraiser and exhibition, and hopefully I think we'll all be able to, gather again in person in the gallery and see the art in person and talk to other artists. It'll be great. So, and I think that's it. So thank you again, Maddie and Paul, for joining us, and thank you to everyone else who who stopped by. So have a good night. Thank you.